Hello everybody, welcome to our third Meet the Expert Monday for Shark Month. So my name's Jax, I'm Community Engagement Officer for the Yorkshire Beach Rangers project at Cornwall Wildlife Trust. So we're one of 31 Our Bright Future projects funded by the National Lottery. We do work all over Cornwall, and now obviously we seem to be reaching a bit further, which is nice. Obviously, it would be nicer to do it in better circumstances, but there we go. So we are running events all through April for Shark Month. So last Monday we had Colin Speedy, and the week before we had Hayley Dalton, and the next week we've got Charles Hood. Sorry, just letting some more people in. That's our Meet the Expert Mondays. Hayley's talk is on YouTube already. Colin's will be going up shortly, as will one that I did a couple of weeks ago about my master's research. And next Monday, Charles Hood, who is just there, hi Charles, we'll be talking about Cornish blue sharks. We've also got some stuff going on during the week. So the lovely Jen, who's our Youth Engagement Officer, is doing videos every Wednesday on sharks and egg cases and mermaids' purses. Hi, Jen. And on Thursday, she's doing a live Q&A on Facebook where you can ask her questions about sharks. And Jodie and I are furiously in the back trying to research any questions we don't know the answer to. So for those. So today we're really lucky to have Lucy Harding. She's a PhD researcher at Trinity College in Dublin, funded by the Science Foundation in Ireland. So she's worked all over, including Fiji, where she, I think, was there just after I was working there. And I think we've got one of our former colleagues there too, which is nice. But yes, she's now studying in Dublin and working on thermal ecology in sharks. So I'm going to hand over to Lucy. So Lucy, you're going to present top, but I'll stay as host. Is that okay?
Cool. Yeah, I'll share my screen now. Okay. So can everybody see that okay? Is it working? Yeah, all good?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Grant, I'll go ahead then. So hi everyone.
Sorry, Lucy. Sorry, Lucy. One thing I forgot to say was if you've got any questions, just in case we run out of time, there's a chat box. So you can click on on your bottom toolbar, there's a little speech bubble. If you click on chat, it'll bring up a message box and you can type a message in there. And we'll keep an eye on those. And if we've got time at the end, then Lucy will answer them. If we don't have time at the end, then we will, Lucy and I will have a chat later on and she'll answer the questions for you. Sorry, thank you.
No worries. Cool. So I hope you're all safe and well. And I just want to start by saying thank you to Jax and the Cornwall Wildlife Trust for having me on today. And also to acknowledge my funders, Science Foundation Ireland and my university, Trinity College Dublin. So my name is Lucy Harding and I'm a PhD student at Trinity College Dublin, as I just said. So just to give you a quick overview, I'm going to talk to you today about who I am, what my background is, kind of what I'm doing at the moment, what I hope to do in the future with Trinity, give you a little bit about endothermy in fish, which I'll explain later, some look at our tagging work, some future plans, and then as Jack said, we'll have a nice Q&A session at the end where you can ask me anything you want to know. So if you hadn't guessed already by my accent, I am Irish. I grew up in Dublin and I did my undergrad and my master's in Dublin. But I've been very lucky to have lived and worked in some amazing tropical places throughout the course of my career so far. I often get asked, how did you get such a cool job? And, oh, you must have studied marine biology to be able to do this. So I thought I'd bring you all back to the beginning of my journey just very briefly. So in 2014, I graduated from Trinity College Dublin with a master's degree in environmental science. At that point, I knew I liked science, but I wasn't quite sure what field specifically. So one thing I'd always wanted to do, however, was to learn to dive. So I decided to take a year off and learn to dive while also doing a bit of science. So I did some marine conservation volunteering work out in Fiji. This then led me on to pursue my degree in applied environmental science. So that was a master's degree I did out in University College Dublin. And by then I knew that I loved science and I loved nature, but I wasn't quite sold on the marine environment just yet. However, through the course of that, then I kind of thought, oh, you know what, I want to go back and start scuba diving again. So I got a job working for a marine conservation NGO. I ended up working in the Philippines for just over a year. And then I moved to Fiji, where I worked for just about 5 months. As I say, about 5 months into that, I decided to give up the beautiful tropical island life, and I moved back to rainy Ireland to pursue my PhD. And a lot of people always ask me, you know, were you happy with that choice? I'd have to say, definitely, I'm very happy I made that decision. So my first year of my PhD has been an absolute whirlwind. It has taken me from tagging tiger sharks in the Bahamas to tagging blue sharks out in Cape Cod in Massachusetts. And I got to help out on a very cool tuna tagging expedition up in County Donegal. And that was with Hayley Dalton, who was speaking 2 weeks ago. Well, what exactly am I working on at the moment? So today I'm going to talk to you about my current PhD work. So not all sharks are cold-blooded. And this work focuses on endothermy in marine fish. So let me just explain to you what exactly that is. So most fish cannot regulate their own body temperature, and that's why people often say that they're a cold-blooded animal. They rely on their environment to heat and cool their bodies. And we call these ectothermic, ecto meaning that they're getting the heat from the outside. So it's coming from the outside, they're not generating it themselves. And the vast majority of marine fish are ectothermic. So there's approximately 33,600 species of marine fish have been cataloged so far. And the vast majority of them are ectothermic. So they're all relying on their environment to heat and cool their bodies. They can't control it themselves. However, recently, a small number of species have been discovered to be able to partially warm their bodies. So we call these regional endotherms, and that's because they can partially generate heat in their body and send it to certain parts of their body to warm them up. One species of marine fish has even been found to be wholly endothermic. So if you look at the bottom right corner there, that's the opa. And that one was discovered, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, to be wholly endothermic. So that's very similar to how humans and mammals regulate their own temperature. But approximately only about 35 species have been found so far to have this ability out of the 33,000+ species of marine fish there are. And they don't all warm their bodies in the same way. So some of them will warm just their brain and their eyes, like the pelagic thresher shark you can see in the top left there. The white shark sends warmth to its red muscle in its body. And the poor beagle shark can warm its brain and its eyes and its muscle. And they all kind of vary among those regionally endothermic fish, how they warm their bodies. And the big question is, why did such a small number of fish species evolve this ability when most others didn't? So what was the purpose of it? Why did they put this energy into doing this? There's currently 2 hypotheses or kind of explanations for this. The first is that some scientists believe that fish have evolved this ability to kind of push themselves out of their comfort zone so they can deal with the temperature stress better by moving into different areas. So for example, say there's a shark and he normally lives in tropical water, say 20 to 30 degrees. Then there's this ocean heat wave that comes along and the area where the shark is living gets far too hot. So the shark either has to move to a new area, a different temperature, or he has to find a way to deal with this heat. And what scientists believe is that the sharks, these regional endotherms, the ones that can control their own body temperature slightly, are better able to deal with these kind of stresses. And they can either move to a different area that's slightly outside of their thermal comfort zone, and they have different ways of dealing with it. So this whole theory is called thermal niche expansion. And this is one of the first theories that I'm investigating. The second theory that scientists have for this is that it helps them to swim faster. This theory is called elevated cruising speeds. So this theory states that if sharks can warm their red muscle, they can increase the power of that muscle, and that helps them to swim faster and to swim further. And so I decided to test these 2 hypotheses, or these 2 explanations, and try and figure out once and for all why not all sharks are cold-blooded. So how do we go about testing these things? Well, so for the first one, the faster swimming theory, we collected data from sharks swimming in the wild. This is just me out on one of our tagging expeditions, and that's a blue shark we tagged off Cape Cod in Massachusetts. What we do is we put devices on the fins of these sharks, and we're able to record the speed that they're swimming at. So similar to the tagging work that Hayley Dalton was speaking about 2 weeks ago, we put tags onto tiger sharks. And we also did it for a number of different endotherms and ectotherms. So the ones that can regulate their temperature and the ones that can't. And we compared the data between the two. This is just a nice picture of one of the studies that was done by our collaborator, and they then sent us that data. So this is a white shark they tagged, and they put a what's called a propeller tag on it. So it's the little one, you can see the black little tag on the center there. And what that is it spins as the shark is swimming through the water, and it records the speed that that shark is swimming at. And we can record this for hours at a time and get really fine scale data, which is amazing. I have to say that shark tagging is some of the most challenging but amazing work I've ever done as part of my PhD. And I just thought I would delve a little bit deeper into the tagging process because I know it can be really interesting. And there's a nice little video that was shot during our tagging work in the Bahamas by a group called Beneath the Waves. So I'll just really quickly show you this nice video. So this was all of us on the back of the boat. We've got a shark tagged at the back, so it's on by ropes. And what you can see there is the little float package that we attach onto their fin. So we put two very small holes into the fin, and we can cable tie this on. And you see as they swim away, that is attached onto their fin. It can detach itself. We don't have to recapture the shark. So we set them free, they swim off, and after a number of hours, that will actually just pop off the fin, leaving two very tiny holes in the fin, and it floats up to the surface. We do also have cameras on these packages. So this is a bird's eye view of what the shark is seeing the whole time that we are recording it. So what you're seeing there is the front of the shark's head and his mouth there. This was actually a female shark called Mabel that had been captured twice before. She's a bit of a silly shark, she keeps getting caught. But this is her swimming along the seagrass. So it's some amazing footage you can get. We also caught some really cool events. So this is the burst event. This is where we think she saw something she wanted to eat and she started swimming. She was gunning it for that, whatever that prey item was. Actually for Mabel, she did not catch it, which would have been cool for us, but she didn't. We also recorded Mabel swimming along a coral reef wall. So this is the wall she was going on. We've just sped it up a bit here for you. She made a huge dive down to just over 300 meters depth. And what we saw as she was swimming down along the wall, she was using the wall to navigate. The water, as she got deeper and deeper, the water got darker and darker as the light was dropping out. Those little red flecks you're seeing are just from the lights that we have on our tag packages, so we can see better with the camera. What happens then after a certain period of time, the tag dissolves and pops off the shark's fin, and it floats off to the surface, leaving the shark to swim away. So that's that really cool footage we caught of the shark just swimming off and doesn't even notice the tag has popped off. We then use an antenna to radio track the tag, and we find it floating on the surface like this, or we hope to find it floating on the surface like that. And then we actually have to go out and retrieve the tag. So this was a nice tag retrieval. I got to do it in the Bahamas on my birthday. So that was really cool. So we got all of our data back. And we're always pretty delighted to get our data back because there's a lot of work that goes into this. So that was an amazing expedition, and we got a huge amount of data. And that was in collaboration with Beneath the Waves and funded by Science Foundation Ireland and the Irish Research Council. But not all shark science is as eye-catching and as exciting as that. I spend a lot of my time collecting data from published studies, and this is where other scientists have done a huge amount of work, and then they share their data with this. So I can take all of this data and I plug it into a coding program, and I run a lot of analysis. So it actually looks very similar to this, which is fun in another way, but not as kind of sexy as the video is. The data for this study is currently still being analyzed, and the study is still ongoing, but I'm hoping to publish it soon. What we're seeing so far from the data is that this endothermy, or this warm-bloodedness, has evolved to actually help the sharks to swim faster rather than to push themselves out of their comfort zones. So that's a really interesting finding. And as I say, keep your eyes peeled. I'm hoping to publish it soon. So now, future work. What am I going to do? I've done 1 year so far, and I've got 3 years left of my PhD, so a bit of a long road ahead of me. But I do have lots of exciting projects planned for the next 3 years. So this year, I'm hoping to finish this first project I've just been speaking about, and then I'm possibly going to conduct another tagging expedition in Australia. That's been put on hold at the moment because of the COVID mayhem, but sure look, it might happen in the future. And what I want to do is I want to put some more of these tags out on tiger sharks and kind of look at how these extreme temperatures that they're experiencing off the east coast of Australia is affecting their natural behavior. And then in my third year, I'm planning to conduct some experiments by putting fish or some small sharks into swim tunnels. So this is an example of a swim tunnel from a previous study. And this will investigate extreme temperatures again and looking at changing thermal stress, how that affects the sharks. And then for my final year, I suspect I will be doing a lot of sitting at my computer, crunching the numbers. But, you know, maybe I'll get to do a bit more of this also, fingers crossed. And just before I finish, I'd like to acknowledge and thank my funding bodies, so that's Science Foundation Ireland and Trinity College Dublin, of course. I'm supervised by Dr. Nicholas Payne and co-supervised by Andrew Jackson and Ian Donoghue. And a big thank you to my lab group as well, of course, and to all of my collaborators so far. So if you have any questions, I would love to answer them. And while we're all stuck in quarantine, I guess we'll just have to keep looking at our shark pictures and hoping we can be back in the water with them soon. So thank you so much for listening.
That's great. Thank you so much, Lucy. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to check the chat. Got any so far? I'd like to ask, did you always were you always fascinated by sharks particularly?
No, people always ask me this, and it started in a weird way. I knew I liked science, and I knew I liked, you know, kind of looking at the natural world. And then it kind of just progressed from there. I landed up in environmental science, and then I went scuba diving, and that's where I kind of started to learn to love fish in general. And then I think just through scuba diving mainly and teaching people about the marine environment, I started to have this insane respect for sharks and what they're dealing with and how they've evolved. And I just find them really, really interesting. So yeah, it's kind of been a slow burn, but yeah, it's grown into a pretty immense obsession.
Cool. Yeah, I feel like shark people do get kind of obsessed. We've got a few questions coming through now. So Josh, who's our Shore Search volunteer coordinator, has asked, how many tags did you not get back, if any?
Oh, so that is always the hard question that gets you right in the heart. We put out a tag out in Cape Cod on a poor beagle shark, which I was super excited. I'd never put one on a poor beagle before. So our collaborator put out the tag for us and it basically disappeared. We never heard from it again. And it had some really cool data on it. So, you know, who knows, maybe it'll wash up on a beach someday. We've got our phone number and our name on it, but yeah, it's pretty hard when they don't come back because it's a lot of work, you know, and you don't want to catch sharks when you aren't going to get the data back. So it's a little bit heartbreaking as well, you know, when you've kind of stressed out the shark a little bit for 5-10 minutes and then you don't get your data back. So kind of the selfishness, but also feeling bad for them.
That's fair. We've got Lorenzo has asked, and you said that question was hard, but I reckon this one might be harder. What is your favorite shark?
Oh, I'm going to say tiger shark because I've had the most interaction with them. I've never actually been in the water with a tiger shark. I've dived with loads of different sharks. Bull sharks would be a close second. I love them. But yeah, I think tiger sharks, I just have immense respect for them. They're so robust and they are just like, I mean, they're called the garbage cans of the ocean. So they just eat anything. And I think, yeah, a bit of respect for that.
Yeah, crack on with that, isn't it? The lovely Hayley Dalton has said, great job. How do you think increasing temperatures might affect regional endotherms?
So this is kind of what my work is all working towards, trying to better predict how these temperatures are going to affect these regional endotherms and ectotherms. Because as we all know, the oceans are warming. They're getting hotter and some areas are getting colder. And what we want to try and do is better predict where they're going to go. So is it going to change their distribution? Is it going to cause a die-off? Are the regional endotherms going to kind of cope better with these thermal stresses than the ectotherms? So I don't really have a solid answer. As I say, people kind of thought that the regional endotherms would deal better, but I'm kind of questioning that now myself. So yeah, I mean, hopefully in 3 years' time, I'll have a better answer for you, Hayley. But yeah, we're trying to predict it better.
Thank you very much. Juno Mullen has asked, did you ever think you'd get hurt?
No, I mean, my initial answer is no. You have to be very careful when you're tagging sharks, of course. They're a very big animal, they're a wild animal. But no, I've never been afraid of being injured myself, because we're very kind of methodical in how we do everything. We do a lot of preparation ahead of time. We have a lot of safety briefings. Everybody knows what they're doing. You have a big team of people, and you don't do anything that would put the safety of any of your team in any way in jeopardy. So number one is safety, and number two is science. So we always prepare and kind of think of anything that could go wrong so that we have a plan. But no, we've always been very careful, so I haven't been worried.
Safety first at all times.
Yes.
Charles has asked, have you found any results yet about the speed issue, i.e. do warm-blooded sharks swim faster?
Yeah, so that's actually the interesting part of the study so far, is that from the data that we've collected so far, so we're hoping still to add more data to that. But what we're seeing so far is that, yeah, they do actually swim at a faster kind of what we call a cruising speed. So this is just when they're swimming along, kind of going about their business. It's not when they're, you know, chasing after a predator like we saw Mabel trying to do. This is just their kind of poodling along speed. But yeah, that cruising speed tends to be a little bit higher in the regional endotherms from what we're seeing so far.
Awesome. Next, we've got quite a few questions, as long as you're happy to carry on, Lucy.
Yeah, of course.
Mel has said, are you finding links between climate change and sharks and their temperatures?
So I mean, I think in terms of what I look primarily at is distribution stuff, so kind of where the sharks are moving. I specifically haven't been studying it yet, but some other studies I've read, they have found that sharks are shifting their distributions in response to climate change. So these areas that are getting too warm for them, like on the east coast of Australia, they're shifting southerly. So we think that's because they're trying to move away from the hotter areas that are heating up, and it's becoming too hot for them to cope with. And this is where my work is trying to feed in and trying to understand, like, will all species respond to this in the same way? Will they all start shifting? Or will these regional endotherms be able to kind of stay put for another while, or will they move to different areas? But yeah, I mean, scientists are definitely finding sharks are responding to climate change in ways that they haven't been seeing before.
Okay, next we've got Charlotte said, how do you catch the shark to put the tag on it?
So we basically go fishing. We put out, there's lots of different ways you can catch sharks for tagging. The way that we did it in the Bahamas is called drum lining. So it's a large buoy attached to a weight, and then there's a line off of it and a hook that's hanging with some meat on it, usually like a fish or tuna steak. But these are specifically designed hooks. They're very, very big, and they're rounded hooks, so that when they go into the side of the shark's mouth, it only leaves one hole, so it's very minimal damage, and we can cut the entire hook out of them. So once we've hooked them on, we check our lines continuously the whole day. And as soon as a shark is on the line, we basically just pull it into the boat like you would do with a fish. Obviously, it's a bit bigger, so I wasn't pulling it in myself. There was a team of us doing it. But yeah, you basically pull it into the end of the boat, and then you put a tail rope on it as well, so you have it secured at both ends. And then sometimes if it's a really big shark, we put a rope around the middle as well, just to hold them nice and steady, but keeping them submerged the whole time. We don't lift them out of the water, because that starts to stress them out, because their gills will dry out, their eyes will dry out, and it's really stressful for them if you take them out. So we keep them submerged at all times. We just secure them on the end of the boat or at the side of the boat, go about our work, get it done as quickly as possible. And then we, at the same time as we cut the hook and we take the rope off, and then they just swim free themselves.
Cool, thank you very much. Next up, we've got Lou. That's Lou Johnson and Colin Speedy. Hello. Great talk. What have you considered about the ethics of swim tunnel work in year 3?
So the swim tunnel work I'm looking at doing will be done primarily with, I think, sea trout or some cat sharks. The ethics of the swim tunnels, I've obviously considered myself, and I'm going to be doing a full, we apply for full licensing through the Ethic Authority in Ireland. These animals will only be kept in the swim tunnel for a small amount of time, and we choose the species based on their conservation status, where we've caught them, kind of whether they were raised in the wild or, whether they were raised in captivity or taken from the wild. And we'll take a minimal number of animals that we can use, so that we are getting as much data as possible from a small number of animals. We haven't decided yet whether the animals will be kept and then sent back into the wild, or whether they'll be a captive fish that has been raised in a fishery or a hatchery, and then we'll put it back into that. So these are all kind of questions that we're considering at the moment. But yeah, absolutely everything is considered in terms of ethics of the animal. And it always comes down to whether taking the animal and conducting an experiment is worth the data that you're finding. So this is a very long process, and that's why it's not until my year 3, because we're going to have to consider all of these things before we kind of push on with any sort of lab experiments.
Lovely, thank you for that. And Dan Ripley has asked, is the warming constant, or can they change the degree to which they heat their muscles based on what they're currently or about to do?
Yeah, so that's actually a really interesting question. That's another study that I'm starting to look at as well, is kind of this rate that they're heating their bodies. So with the ectotherms, the cold-blooded sharks, what you tend to see is their body temperature just kind of mimics the ambient temperature. So as the water is cooling, you'll see their body cooling, and as it's heating, their body will start to heat. And what I'm looking at now is from the data that we collected, again, it's a track of the water temperature, and then I have the body temperature beside it. And I'm trying to look at how fast or slow they're heating or cooling, and whether this is differing between different regional endotherms. So looking at poor beagles versus white sharks, and kind of, is it a constant rate? So when they're heating, are they all heating at the same speed? When they're cooling, are they all heating at the same speed? And is the heating and cooling doing at the same time as well? Is that rate similar, or is it different? You know, do they cool faster than they heat, or do they heat faster than they cool? So I'm still looking at that, but it's a study that I'm working on at the moment. So get back to me in a year or 2.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got Lorenzo said thank you for answering his previous question, and has said, what was the hardest tag you've done?
The hardest tag in terms of kind of catching the animal, or?
He hasn't said, but I assume, yeah. So how? Well, what is the hardest tag that you've done in terms of catching? But then what else would you? What other kind of hard tag would you do?
I mean, in terms of logistics, the hardest animal that we've tagged has definitely been the tiger sharks. So we caught some tigers that were over 3 meters. So that is a fairly big animal that you're dealing with. So as I say, it's a big team of people working on it. They can be quite difficult to get into the boat. So it takes quite a while to kind of, you don't want to pull them in and stress them out. So what you do is you let them kind of calm themselves down for ages, and then you slowly pull them. And if they stress, you let them out again. So it can be really tiring work. And on one of the days in the Bahamas, we actually managed to catch 11 sharks, which was just a huge amount of work. So we were constantly, because the thing is, once they're on that line, you want to get them out and tagged and back in the water as soon as possible. So you're just working nonstop all day long, trying to get this work done. So I think that was definitely one of the hardest days that we had. We were all exhausted by the end of it. So yeah, I'd say in terms of the hardest tag, it's probably the 3 meter tiger sharks. And then in terms of logistics, I think in kind of weather conditions for yourself, I think the tuna tagging was definitely quite hard on me, even though I was not lucky enough to actually tag a tuna. I went fishing for a few days and sat on a very cold boat. Didn't catch any tuna, but I'm sure Haley can attest to how hard it is to tag a tuna, because they are very big animals as well. And you do have to bring them on the boat, and there's lots of other procedures then that are involved in that. So yeah, I think tuna tagging is probably up there as well. Not that I was lucky enough to do it.
Thank you. And then we've just got one last question. So Laura Bishop has said, thank you for such a fascinating talk. And of the 35, sorry, just one moment. Of the 35 regional endothermic species you mentioned earlier, are all these species sharks or higher tier predators, or were there any species you found that surprised you?
Yeah, so I mean, of these 35, it hasn't been proven that all of them are regional endotherms. A few of them we kind of, based on, where they lie in the evolutionary tree, kind of their relatives, we are assuming that they are probably regionally endothermic. But yeah, there's billfish, swordfish, they're also regional endotherms. Tunas are another one. So it's not just sharks. And it does kind of, one pattern we're seeing is that they all tend to be these high level fast swimming predators that are these regional endotherms. So that is probably related to why they've evolved this ability, and that's another aspect that we're looking into as well. So yeah, it's super interesting. I think the thresher sharks were the ones that took me off guard. I wouldn't have thought that they were regional endotherms. So that was pretty cool.
Awesome. I think that's all the questions that we've got. So thank you again so much, Lucy. Really appreciate
Thank you.
you taking the time, and lots of people saying thank you for answering their questions. I'll be uploading this to YouTube sometime later this week. But yeah, so we've got some more stuff coming up this week for Shark Month. We've also, for the Wildlife Trust, we've got different projects doing different talks through the weeks as well. So look out for Cornwall Wildlife Trust's Shore Search and Sequest Southwest projects. But yeah, other than that, thank you so much for your time, Lucy, and thank you everybody who has listened, and I hope you're all safe and well, and we'll see you next week for Charles's talk.
Thank you.